Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Japan once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last year or two. They are still a relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very, very good reputation for themselves. If people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that these days you can consider them as being quite well-rounded, but they really made their name for brewing the different kinds of IPAs, notably the New England Hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from them quite a few times before. It's one that I know they can do very well, and it's also one of their latest releases here in Hong Kong too, so it should be quite interesting, this one. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to head over to Japan, like I said. We are going to go to Shizuoka Prefecture, which is a bit to the kind of southwestish of Tokyo, right next to Mount Fuji, of course. And to be specific, we are going to go to the city of Mochimune, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful West Coast Brewing. So this particular beer is called the Lupulin Tree. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and this one is another New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, I've reviewed a few beers in this particular style category from West Coast Brewing before. It's one that I know they can do very well, and I have heard very good things about this particular beer. This one apparently is one of their 5th anniversary releases, so it was quite cool to find it here in Hong Kong. This is one that I picked up from City Super in Tsim Sha Tsui, and all of the City Superstores seem to get a fairly regular assortment of West Coast Brewing stuff, so I need to keep an eye on that going forward and just see what we can get. But yeah, go and check out City Super. Usually an interesting selection of beer down there, quite a lot of local Hong Kong stuff and a few oddities from other places too. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from West Coast Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with many other things, and that's being added to quite regularly now that I am based out in Asia. And if you are particularly interested in Japanese beer, do make sure you check out my friend Neva over at Japanese Craft Beer Reviews. I'll try and remember to put the link to his channel in the video description below. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about West Coast Brewing once again then. So West Coast Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Mochimune in Shizuoka Prefecture in Japan, right next to Mount Fuji. And this brewery was founded back in 2019 by Derek Baston, who is originally from Seattle in Washington over in the US. And in a previous life, he worked as an architect. So Derek originally came to Shizuoka back in 2003, and he would often visit different breweries during his trips home. And he said that he was always inspired by the craftsmanship that went into the West Coast US beers. And he really wanted to bring some of that back to Japan with him, because he felt there weren't many breweries at the time doing this. So apparently the idea to found his own brewery can be traced back to 2014, when he designed the Shizuoka distillery for Gaia Flow, and this was his first real look inside the brewing and distilling world, and it helped him just kind of get an idea of what was going on. But it inspired him as well to go and visit other breweries and distilleries and talk to those people inside the industry, and apparently doing this made the whole process of starting his own brewery seem a lot less daunting. So he founded a bar in Shizuoka called 12 to basically test the water and see if the beers that he wanted to brew would be a hit, and it became quite clear early on that it would. So they found a premises in an abandoned tuna processing factory in the Mochimune marina. They renovated it and converted it into a brewery, and this brewery is equipped with a 10 BBL system, which is around 1600 litres per brew, and they've got 10 fermentation vessels and 2 bright tanks. I think that might have been expanded actually over the last few years. I would need to check out those numbers, but they produce somewhere between 12 to 20,000 litres of beer per month, and the 3 brewers are Satoshi Niwa, who is from Japan, he's the brewing manager. Then there's Cedric Mel, who's from France, and also Grant Scholler, who is from the US. But the brewery's mascot is the Hop Dude, and I don't know, is he actually on this one? I think this might be one of the few West Coast brewing beers where the Hop Dude isn't that visible. Basically, they've got a big hop flower as their mascot, known as the Hop Dude, and he's always doing different things. If you go and check out my other West Coast brewing reviews, you'll see him a little bit more clearly actually. But over the first few years, these guys leaned mostly toward brewing different IPAs, but they've also been establishing a barrel program recently as well. You'll see me review my first beers from that in December or so, maybe October, I'm not quite sure, we'll need to see, but I do have 2 back in Japan that I'm going to be reviewing quite soon. And they've also been opening a number of bars and tap rooms all over the place. So this includes Bao, which is a gyoza restaurant. They've got 12, which is the original one, the izakaya. Number 3, which is a bottle shop. You'll find all 3 of those in Shizuoka City. They've got Oasis, which is a bar in Hamamatsu, and then they've got Umeda Ichi or Umeda 1, which is a bar, and then the Dark Lab bar as well, both of which can be found in Osaka, where I spend a lot of time, of course. But yeah, as of September 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 390 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about West Coast Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself then. So as you can see, and as is pretty much always the case with West Coast Brewing, this one is a 500 milliliter can. The artwork on this is of course by the legendary Simon Henshaw, the creator of the Hop Dude. I think he's from Manchester in England if I'm not mistaken. He does things for a few different breweries actually. But yeah, you can see plain silver top on the can there. It does look really nice, this one. But yeah, to tell you a little bit about the beer, as I said earlier, this one comes in at 8.5% ABV. It is a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and it's hopped with New Zealand hops, Riwaka, Nelson Sauvin, and Peacherine. So Riwaka is about 6% alpha acid, if memory serves me correctly. It's often compared to Czech Sats, Žatec. Quite a lot of grapefruity character, but also a really big floral component from what I remember. Peacherine is a newer hop on the scene. I think it was only 2021, 2022 or something like that, but it gives you a lot of peach and nectarine. It's quite low in its alpha acid as well, I think 6 to 8% normally. But yeah, the name of that one makes sense when you consider what fruity flavours you get from it. I've had that once or twice now actually. And then you've also got the legendary Nelson Sauvin in here, which is 16% alpha acid, and it gives you that very distinctive white, green, grapey, almost gooseberry like character. So we have a New Zealand hopped New England Hazy double IPA with this one, with the Lupulin tree. So yeah, it's quite fitting that actually, because New Zealand hops are very, very popular of course. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about the beer. I think I paid 65 Hong Kong dollars for this one in City Super, so that's about £6.50, €7, $7.50 American, something like that, just to give those of you watching in different places a rough idea. And that's probably about the same price as I would have paid for this in Japan actually, so that's quite good. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see how we go. The Lupulin tree from West Coast Brewing in Mochimune, Shizuoka, over in Japan. Let's do this. And I think this one is fairly fresh as well. It will still be within its first 2 months or so, actually, because I remember seeing this one just getting released. But yeah, let me just line that up for you again so that my OCD is happy. But yeah, you can see this one's poured pretty much as you would expect from a New England Hazy. So you can see, I gave it quite an aggressive pour in all honesty, but you can see there's over a finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream coloured head there. You can see the smaller bubbles on the surface of the liquid, and as you go up further up with that, you can see it gets a little bit more kind of soapy and bubbly the further that you go. But yeah, nice kind of cream coloured head there, and the colour of this beer is really nice actually, a very rich sort of mixed tropical fruit juice colour with this one. So yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But of course, you don't often have to care about that when it comes to different types of IPA, in all honesty. But yeah, as I say, I like comparing the colour of these ones to different fruit juices, because that's really just what their appearance reminds me of. But yeah, good looking beer, this one. So not much in the way of visible carbonation, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there. But yeah, looks good, this one. Level of haze in this is actually leaning more toward the kind of soupier and gloopier end of the spectrum. This is one of the soupier and gloopier ones I think I've had from West Coast Brewing, even when I've had quite a few triples, in all honesty. So yeah, the level of haze in these New England IPAs depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use, and that can vary from brewery to brewery and even beer to beer, in all honesty. But in terms of what you would expect appearance-wise from a New England IPA, this one isn't really doing anything surprising there. But like I said, this brewery are very good when it comes to this style, in my experience. So let's move on then and have a little look at the aroma of this beer. I have to say I'm very, very curious about that, especially with considering the fact that it's got some nice New Zealand hops in it. So let's do it. Ooh, that's quite nice actually. Comes across as very well rounded, this one, in all honesty. But yeah, you've got everything you'd expect. You've got the big malty character in this one, that kind of big white bready character. Good green component too as well, but very soft and very juicy too, which I'm definitely happy about. So yeah, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. But yeah, really interesting smelling beer, this one. So as I've often said on the channel, for me there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of New England hazy IPAs. You've got the sort of farmhousey yeasty type character and the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in the old school American or New England brewed New England IPAs, because this beer really started off as like a farmhouse IPA, but as the style's evolved, it's moved a little bit to a more kind of sweet flavour, if you like. So you've got the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, the barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things to think about when it comes to this beer style. And most breweries outside of New England that are brewing these are taking them along that kind of route. Now when it comes to this one, I think this one has a good balance between the wheat, the oats, and the barley malt. You can smell all three in this, and the yeasty character is coming out a little bit too. But yeah, for me, it's quite juicy, this one, and the fruity character in this is a wee bit different as well compared to other ones that I've had from West Coast. So yeah, 1 or 2 little bits of food for thought in here, but yeah, aroma wise this is good. Let's just break it down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer, lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. Of course you've got a little touch of woodiness, and you've got that bit of crackery character as well. So yeah, fresh white bready bread crust in there, a little bit of wood, a little bit of cracker, and then yeah, on top of that you start to get the bready notes. So pull this out. Don't know if you guys could have heard that, but yeah, on top of that there's a little bit of kind of wholemeal brown bready character coming out of this one. This beer actually does show you a little bit of graininess almost the more that you smell of it. So yeah, it's got a wee bit of that kind of grainy character in there. Yeah, a little bit of graininess for sure. And then on top of that brown bready character, you get more of the white bread. So you can smell like a fluffy, more airy white bready character to this beer from the barley malt. And then further back on the nose, there's a good little bit of yeah, there's a good little bit of wheaty bitiness in there. You can smell that denser white bready, wheaty character in there too. And then the oats are coming out of this one quite nicely. As I've often said, the oaty character of a New England IPA can be a rough measure of how fresh your New England IPA is. Essentially, the fresher the beer is, the creamier the oats smell and taste, the older it is, the drier they are. So you're getting a little bit of dryness out of this one. This beer at this point in time is about 2 months old, so you're starting to get a wee bit of that, but you can still smell the nice creamy character from these ones, from the oats in this beer too. You do also have to remember that wheat and oats can vary a little bit depending on where they're from. So for example, in Europe the oats are a bit creamier, whereas in America, in North America, the oats are a little bit more kind of porridgey. European wheat is a bit more bitey, whereas American wheat is a little bit smoother. And of course you've got Australia, which will be exporting a lot of that to Asia as well. So yeah, it kind of depends on where they've sourced their malt from, or indeed if they've produced it locally, and more of that is going on in Japan. But anyway, the wheaty character in this one does have a little bit of bitiness at the back of the nose, but still a degree of smoothness too. The oaty character is quite sweet and creamy, I would say, and on top of all of that, you do have an element of sweetness coming out of this beer. There's a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy and slightly biscuity note coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, aroma-wise, that's pretty good. At the back of the nose, there are some yeasty characters coming out of this one, and it's like a mix of brown and white bread, a little bit of woodiness, a little bit of cracker, and yeah, a little bit of woodiness, a little bit of cracker, and then yeah, you have just a little bit of like a more kind of farmhousey sort of bready note coming out of it. So it's really nice. The aroma of this one on the malty yeasty side of things is pretty damn good, but it does get grainier, I would say, the more that you smell of it. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. Your green component in this one. Now remember, when it comes to hopping IPAs, you have 3 different kinds of hoppings that you can do. Early addition hopping, usually within the first hour of the wort boil, that gives you mainly bitterness and a deeper, danker aroma. Late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil, that gives you a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, and a nice bright green component in terms of your flavour and aroma. Then you've got the, then you have the dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, and again, very bright green component out of that. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs use all 3, which is why they're deeper, danker and more bitter, and that's why the New England IPAs are like softer and more juicy, but their green component is maybe just a little bit more pungent on the nose actually. But yeah, with this one, there is definitely, with this one, there is a little bit of there's a wee bit of a kind of earthy character in there. There's a wee touch of herbal note as well, but the green component for me is mostly kind of floral and aromatic and kind of spicy, and I guess that's the Riwaka that's going to give you that, because it does have that I think it's a daughter actually, or a son of Czech Sats. It definitely has some descendants from that, if I remember correctly. But yeah, you've got a nice floral aromatic spice coming out of this one, and quite a wee bit of zesty, grassy character as well. So yeah, all in all, the green component of this one is pretty nice, but pretty pungent as well. Let's round off the aroma then with a wee look at the fruits before we taste the beer. So for me, the fruity character in this one is really quite interesting, because it really has, you do get a little bit of that really bright grapefruit, and that's going to come from Riwaka. Riwaka is going to give you that sort of pinky grapefruit sort of note, and you can smell that right away. But there's also the undertones of the underlying sort of white, green, grapey, gooseberry thing from the Nelson Sauvy, and it's very, very distinctive, and it gives the beer a sort of oily character in its fruity notes as well. So that's very obvious in this one, in my opinion. But then on top of that, you're definitely getting a wee bit more of the kind of, you can definitely get that sort of peachy note. I'm getting some sort of apricot papaya type qualities in there, but yeah, the peach from the peacherine is obviously coming out, and the nectarine in this one's quite interesting too, because it is a little bit like orangey in a sense, but it has a wee bit more of a kind of peachy sharpness to it. Nectarine isn't something I've had all that often, in all honesty. So yeah, the aroma on the fruity side of things for me is quite interesting. But yeah, pink grapefruit, the white, green, grapey, gooseberry type note underneath from the Nelson Sauvin, apricots, peach for sure, and then yes, like a kind of orangey, nectarine type note out of it. All in all, the aroma of this one is really, really interesting, and I'm more just very curious to see how this beer is going to taste. I'm wondering, just with the colour of it as well, if it's going to be a little bit of a sweeter New England Double IPA too. As I always say though, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. That's always half the experience when it comes to trying craft beers and whiskies and sakes and stuff. But let's taste this one now. This is the Lupulin Tree 8.5% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from West Coast Brewing, Mochimune Shizuoka Ken, over in Japan. Let's get stuck into this. Slanju, skål, cheers, kanpai. Ooh. That's really nice actually. I think I've got this one just at the right temperature as well. It was sitting for about 10 minutes or so before I actually started the video. And that's one of the things I like doing about, you know, having slightly longer videos, because the beer will open up and it'll warm up a little bit slightly and you start to get more and more flavour out of it. But I will say, that's a really damn good New England Double IPA. That's good right on the edge of the glass there as well. But yeah, you will enjoy this one if you like this style. And this brewery, as I say, one of the best in Japan, this particular style. And it is in pretty good condition. As I say, not at its absolute freshest, but this is definitely one of the kind of creamier and also slightly more oily and slick New England IPAs that I can remember having had from West Coast Brewing. Very good. So let's do as we always do then and just break the flavour of this beer down a wee bit and describe it more in depth. So, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust coming out of this one there. Like a kind of hedgehog roll almost. That is the backbone of the beer. As you move further forward, you start to get that little touch of woody character that you'll very often get from these beers, but then definitely a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker above that. This one, I'm trying to figure out if there is a wee bit of like a slightly brown bready layer in this one, because yeah, you've got the bread crust and the cracker. I do want to say there's a little bit of a kind of airy and slightly fluffy wholemeal brown bready character in there. It's got a wee bit more kind of sweetness to it in a way, but then above that you've got a more fluffy, yeah, you've got a more kind of fluffy white bready character coming out of this beer too. So yeah, the way it goes together I think is really, really nice in this one. So yeah, this one gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, a little bit of brown bread, fluffy or white bread in there, and then above that you've got more of a kind of dense, yeah, you've got more of a kind of dense wheaty type note coming out of this one. So the wheat's quite interesting because it does show you a little bit of bitiness further back on the palate, but overall it is actually quite smooth, I would say. So yeah, you've got a nice kind of smooth wheaty character coming out of this one, which is good. And yeah, the way that that goes together is nice. Yeah, so the smoother wheat further forward, the more bitey wheat further back. And yeah, the way that that goes together is it's really, really nice. So for me, the mix of bread and stuff that you have in this one is really quite nice. I'd say a bit of brown bread, a bit of white bread, and a more dense wheaty white bready character in there as well. Above that though, you're starting to get the oaty. You're starting to get the oaty side of things out of it, and kind of down the middle line of your palate, you can feel the more kind of creamy character coming out of the beer. So yeah, definitely you've got that more kind of creamy oaty character going down the middle line of your palate, and as you move out toward the edges of the tongue, it's showing you a little bit more of a kind of slightly drier oaty note in there. But the oats are quite sweet in this one. I'd be very curious to know where they've sourced the oats from in this case, because they are showing more of the kind of creamy European character, but there is a wee bit of that American-y porridgey type note to it as well. But yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel that little circle there where you've got the Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy notes coming out of the beer, and that is of course the alcohol flavour. And just around the edge of that, it's got a wee bit of a, it has got a wee bit of a more kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive biscuity note to it, this one. But I wouldn't say that this is a sweet New England double IPA, especially compared to some other ones that I've come across. It just has a nice level of sweetness. So this is one of these beers that shows you a little bit of everything in its malt base. But I think at that we've covered everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate then. Now remember with your palate that sweeter flavours will come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back, and the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you'll start to get some of the bready build-up. But yeah, between middle and back third of your palate, you're going to get very similar flavours, just at different intensities. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build-up in there. You can feel the brown bread in the base, the white bread in the middle, and the more dense, wheaty bready character, and the wee bit of bitiness there above that. But then yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got some really nice you've got some really nice kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. You've got some nice kind of Jacob's cream cracker as well. Then you've got the brown bready layer again, which feels a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. Going above that, you've got the white bready layer, which again feels a little bit lighter, taller, more airy. Both of these have a bit more dryness and crackery character to them. Then you've got the more dense, wheaty white bready character just kind of creeping over the top of that, which is quite nice. So yeah, the wheaty white bready character in this beer for me is really interesting. So yeah, it has a little bit of bitiness on that back third of the palate, but overall it's actually quite smooth and quite dense in a way. So yeah, I like that with this one. Yeah, so on top of all of that, you get a really nice you get a really nice little bit of yeasty character coming out of this one. So for me, the yeasty side of this beer, at its core, it's got a little bit more of a kind of sweeter brown bready character in there. Then around the edge of it, it's got a wee bit of a more grainy white bready note to it. And then yeah, definitely more of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust character coming out of it as well. So yeah, you've got that little bit of graininess there. Yeah, sweet, more brown bready character in the middle, bit of more white bready note around the edge, and then a wee bit, yeah, bread crusty note there. There's a wee bit of crackery character just throughout all of that though. But as I say, the yeast sits on top of the back third of your palate, and definitely you can feel the flavour in the back third of your palate is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But all in all, really, really nicely done on its malty and yeasty side of things, this beer. So on the hoppy side of things then, green component first. It's kind of what you'd expect. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you come further forward, it gets a little bit more woody, right enough. Then as you reach the front corners of your palate, you've got some nice floral aromaticity. Then round the front curve of your tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more sort of grassy, I would say. So yeah, the way that goes together is really, really quite nice. Gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, let's have a little look at that front third of your palate then. So front third of your palate, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, between middle and front and middle third of your palate, I should say. You get that nice little bit of bready build up in there again. You've got some you've got some kind of brown bready characters in the base. You've got a nice little bit of white bready character sitting above that, then a wee bit more of a kind of bitey, wheaty note in there. But the base of that front third of your palate, yeah, you've got some really nice white bready bread crust once again. You've got a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker. You've got the brown bread, the white bread, and the more smooth, wheaty note coming out of this one. And then above that, of course, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at the fruity side of things with this one then and see what we get out of these hops. But will say the fruity side of this beer is pretty damn nice actually. Yeah, this is good actually. This is maybe one of my favourite hazies that I've had from West Coast Brewing. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel that nice bright kind of pink grapefruity character. That's the Riwaka, of course, and you've got all the kind of peachy characters coming out of this one too, which is really, really nice. So yeah, you've got the big peachy notes in this one, the pink grapefruit in there, but then the anchor, the base of that fruity side of things is the Nelson Sauvin, and that's on the front half and the back half of that front third of your palate there. So yeah, you've got that white green grapey note from the Nelson Sauvin sitting all the way there. The peach is of course going to come from the peacherine, and the grapefruit's going to come from the Riwaka in this one. But as you move further forward toward the kind of middle of the front third of your palate, again, it's really quite nice. In the middle of your palate, there's maybe a little bit of like a mango-y, apricot-y sort of thing. But then, yeah, as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's all about the kind of nectarines and the real brightness that you get out of those. So, yeah, the way that all of that pieces together in this one, I think, is really, really quite nice. So, yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me in that regard. So yeah, I like that with this beer. The fruity side of it and the malty backbone is really nice. I don't know why this one just kind of strikes a chord with me. I really like how everything kind of pieces together in this beer. Potentially my favourite hazy that I've had from West Coast Brewing, even though it's not in its prime freshness. I think this one just goes down really nicely at the moment. So yeah, let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, it's pushing kind of top end of mid-body. The carbonation has quite a bit of a smoothening character to it. And this one, it's a mix of like creamy and oily, this beer, I would say. So yeah, so say the malt base in this one has a little bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a bit of creaminess and sweetness on top. And then yeah, it's the fruity side of this one is actually quite pungent and more citrusy leaning, but yeah, you get the more juicy tropical notes the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, all in all, I think the way everything goes together in this one is really, really nice. IBU count in this doesn't come across as overly bitter, but I think there might be about 40-ish IBUs in this one. You can feel just a little bit of that lingering into the aftertaste there, like with some of the floral aromatic spice. But like I said, a lovely, lovely New England double, this one, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. I'm not surprised because I know how good this brewery is, but yeah, this one has just kind of struck a chord with me, I guess we could say. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Lupulin Tree, an 8.5% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from West Coast Brewing in Mochimune City, Shizuoka Prefecture over in Japan. Wonderful, wonderful beer, this, from a really great brewery. So let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from West Coast Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, slàinte, skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out their social media, check out my friend Neva over at Japanese Craft Beer Reviews, and I will see you guys again in another review very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.